Okay, so I'm going to show you kind of the inner workings of one of our pumps. Basically, show you how to take it out, check it, possibly get any obstructions out of it. This particular one, I just received back from a lady, claimed that it wasn't working at all. I did in fact test it. Um, so it's got power. Of course, now the dreaded LLL, anybody gets that on their thermostat, it's just because it's not getting a reading from the sensor, so you want to check your connections. You can see I'm just plugging a sensor directly in there to just to make the system work. But you can see it's 72 degrees. The set temperature is 65. The little light is on, which indicates that there's power going to the pump, but we're getting nothing. So the lady, when I talked to her, she seemed very confused about the filter, what I was talking about. And so I suspect that she was running it without a filter altogether, which may work for a while, but you'd be surprised the stuff that can get sucked into that pump. Even as clean as you may think your water is, sometimes ice has impurities in it, or if you're using frozen bottles, sometimes if you set those bottles somewhere while you're waiting to put them in your cooler, then they'll get some debris on the outside of the bottle, and then when you put it in the water, then that debris is in the cooler. Anyway, so we recommend, for those of you that got models before this year, you have like a little bubble on the outside that has little holes in it. It's kind of basically like a golf ball type looking screen. If you've had those, you probably had to scrape those off quite often. But the newer models that we came out with late last year, late last summer, we started including these new little filters that slide in there and protect the pump, or at least to stop the majority of stuff from going into the pump. Not that some little stuff can't still pass through there, but anyway, there was a little bit of a flaw in the design. These filters will, we figured gravity would hold them in place, which it does for the most part. If you're on a bumpy road or something, you might get it kind of bouncing up and down with the movement of the water. The main thing you have to watch for is when you dump your water out of the cooler, which this is kind of something we thought was common sense, but when you're dumping the water out of the cooler, you'll want to dump it on the opposite side of any of your electronic equipment or anything like that. Just these are pretty protected. You can see the outside is the back side is pretty sealed up, but water can get on the front side of these, and if you get too much water in there, it can corrode stuff, and then these things stop working altogether, or they don't work correctly. So you want to try to protect these from any kind of water getting on the outside. Same with the battery pack. There's not many areas where water can get in them, but if you're using these in a spot where maybe you're outside and it's raining or whatever, you're going to want to cover these things up. Because if water gets inside, water has a way of doing nasty things to things when it's not supposed to be in there. So anyway, yeah, we always kind of recommend carrying a garbage bag or something to cover the cooler, like in a rainstorm or something like that, and that way you don't have to worry about water getting where it's not supposed to. And then of course dumping the water out, if you dump it on the opposite side of where this unit is, then you kind of avoid any shrapnel water or whatever you want to call it from getting shrapnel. I don't know what that's a bad term, but anyway, you get my point. But yeah, we highly recommend if you're running your pump at all that there's some kind of filter in there. Like I showed you, this system did not work at all, so I'm going to show you how to take the pump out. So you can just spread these kind of walls apart. Now this of course is taken out of the cooler, so you'd have to remove it if you want to see how to get this particular thermostat one out of the cooler. Check out our other video on how to do that. But you just kind of spread this wall apart, and then that pump will kind of, the main thing you have to worry about is this this wire here. If you rub it on that side, or if you kind of try to force it in there, or force it out of there, it can actually wear the insulation off the wire, which it won't work if it's got water because it kind of shorts out in the water. So that's a big thing, is that just kind of that's in a bad spot, but we tried to design the pump housings to accommodate, you know, that little spot, but you just have to be, you know, careful removing that. But other than that, I mean, you can see it's pretty simple. You can leave everything attached to do what I'm going to do here. It's got 4 screws that on the intake side of the pump, so you just remove those. Kind of in the shadow here, but remove these 4 screws. Now, one thing you can do periodically is run like a vinegar solution through the system, and that'll help kind of keep any growths or whatever from formulating inside of your tubing, inside of the pump. These pumps are rated at 20,000 hours, and so I don't know who would ever use them for 20,000 hours, but they're supposed to run that long. And so the main enemy to the pump is just kind of build up, gunk build up, mineral build up inside. So look at there, we got a feather, it looks like a bunch of fuzz, maybe fur or something inside there. Maybe that was obstructing the impeller. Usually it takes a little more than that, but we'll take the impeller out and see what else we maybe have in here. So I'm just taking the screwdriver tip and just getting it kind of underneath the side of that impeller, or the spindle, whatever you want to call it. Oh, looky there, I think there's maybe a dead cat inside of there, I'm not sure, but that's probably the culprit right there. It's a bunch of hair, I don't know, yeah, that looks like hair. So that's inside of the pump housing, or the pump there. Take a look in there. It doesn't, can't tell if there's anything more in there, but I would almost bet money that was the issue. So you can see there's not much to this. This is kind of a magnetic, you know, it's just a magnetic system. The little impeller, there's not a whole lot to it. Some of these pumps I have seen where this impeller is separate, and it fits on the end of this other spindle, but yeah, that just fits in there like that. There's a little O-ring around this part. I'm not sure exactly what the purpose of that is, because you're not trying to keep water out of there or anything. So I'm going to put that back together, throw these screws in, and you know, like I said, I'd almost bet my life that was the whole reason that this pump wasn't working. But yeah, you definitely want to have the filter, or have, we're looking at some different kind of a sponge, maybe type of filter that will stay in place a little bit better. But these will generally stay in place when it's upright. It's just, you know, when you're dumping that water out, you just got to be careful, because you might lose the filter in that water you're dumping out. So maybe a good idea is to kind of pop that filter out of there before you even dump your water, and then that way, you know, you have it, and then once your water's out, then you can throw it back in there. So to get these back in, same thing, you just kind of pry that apart, and then that pump just pops back in place. So I'm going to fire this thing up, and we'll see, but I would almost bet money it's going to work now. So got it. We'll turn it on manual mode first. So yeah, sure enough, we got the dead cat out of there, and pump works like a charm now, both modes. So, and then of course, when you're putting these back on the cooler, the main thing you want to know is you don't want to over tighten these screws, because this is plastic here, and so you can strip it out if you try to tighten the screws down too much. But other than that, I mean, pretty simple process. Somebody might get intimidated by it, but you know, once you have this out of the cooler, then it's, you know, it's very, very simple process to clean it. Now this one here, this is a non-thermostat model. In fact, I just cleaned it. You can see the tubes on it were pretty discolored, and so I don't know what kind of water they were running through this thing, but it had kind of the same kind of thing. There was a bunch of paper inside of the pump when I took it apart and then put it back together, and it was fine. So but these ones are real simple. If by chance that once you take it apart and clean that out like I just showed you and it still doesn't work, we do have these for sale on the website. To just buy this whole setup like this. Comes with a pack of filters, a new gasket, a new ring plate, and a new screws, and then you can just take your old one out and pop it in. Now of course if you have models before we had this style, then that won't work for you, but we've gone with this style the last 3 summers. This is the 3rd summer we've sold these ones, so it's pretty simple to change them out. And in fact, well, the old style you'd get the new style with the filter option. So anyway, that's an option. If you we have these particular ones, the non-therm ones, on the website. You can just go right on there and purchase. If you need a thermostat one, just let us know, and we can just have you purchase the same thing. And then we'll just figure out which model of thermostat one you have, because we did have a different version last year that we just switched up to have the sensor plug directly into the pump housing. So anyway, sorry the video was so long, but hopefully you got some out of that. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section, and we'll try to answer those as they come in. So thanks again for everybody's support, and stay cool out there.